Welcome back, Red Spotters! Another show here on the Red Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Alexis J. Soto, joined by Mr. David Francisco. And we are back with another Marvel recap. As we have been with WandaVision and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we're here to recap another Marvel show, the one that just debuted on Disney+. We're talking about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And as we did with S.H.I.E.L.D. and WandaVision, we'll be providing weekly recaps. Instead of 9 episodes, as we did with WandaVision, we have 6 episodes this time with Falcon and Winter Soldier that we'll be diving into on a weekly basis, as long as as also with the conversation that is surrounding the show. And as always, I have wonderful content that I dug up to share with David today and to get his priceless reactions, because we've got plenty of stuff to cover with here. David, first and foremost, how are you doing on this wonderful Red Spotlight number 308? Yay.
Good. Yeah, I'm good. Just tired.
Yeah, it's kind of the end of the month. I gather it's that time to feel a little bit tired. I know, speaking with some of our other members here on Red Spotlight, everyone's caught up on, or getting caught up on certain things, as well as dealing with work, you know. It's a very transitional period of time, as we've mentioned on other shows. You know, we're beginning to turn a corner as far as the pandemic is concerned, more and more getting vaccinated, and so little by little there are some returns to normalcy, and as such, there will also be some return to, shall we say, more straining work schedules. So I've already had to reschedule some shows that we had planned this weekend for other work-related issues. So here we are with that. But for today, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yeah, it's also weird because, like, usually that would be the big thing, but it came in a week where there were other things happening, you know, like we had just seen Raya and the Last Dragon, and then, I mean, us as a group, I know it had been out for 2 weeks already, but we hadn't gotten the chance to see it up until last weekend. And then, of course, Zack Snyder's Justice League, which, you know, if you're watching that, that's 4 hours of your life. And that's only if you watch it the once. And so don't worry, for those of you out there who are curious about what we want to say or what we have to say about, you know, the Snyder Cut, as they call it. We're going to have multiple shows on that to make sure as many of our members as possible get a chance to comment on it. So stay tuned, as well as our thoughts on Raya the Last Dragon, which we also did a podcast on Fantasy Fair with Kyle Lira, in order to make sure you hear his thoughts as well. So how we usually do these recaps is we talk about the episode in sequence. After, of course, we give our initial impressions, our spoiler-free initial impressions. But usually at the top, mostly at the top, I do like to start off with how the show has been talked about, what news the show has made, and other kind of housekeeping items that David and I had been discussing on our WandaVision recaps, in regards to not just that show, but to another show that evidently was not popular. But I'll take their word for it. Anyway, let's start off with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It was received, for the most part, I want to say, you know, with unanimous praise. Not to say that it was, you know, acclaim all around, because I do have some articles that I found here that were not too kind overall to the first episode, but for the most part, I think everyone enjoyed it. Although when you have time competing with Zack Snyder, it may not be as clear as it was with WandaVision, when it pretty much had the entire conversation all to itself. I don't put too much stock into this necessarily as other people do, but for what it's worth, Falcon and the Winter Soldier only trended on the day that it debuted, for like half the day, whereas something like the Snyder Cut was trending the entire weekend. I don't consider that to be like a personal metric of success as others do, but if that's what you think is most important, then that's the number. Although also, I'm not too. Yeah, go ahead, David.
It also just because Snyder Cut, was trending far more. It's not really because the quality was better or anything like that. It's just there was a lot of things going on with that movie that people were bringing up many different things. A lot of it wasn't even about the quality of the movie. It was just the background of it. So it's just, I'm saying that because some people are like, oh, I mean, Falcon Winter Soldier didn't trend. Clearly, it's doing horrible. I'm like, you gotta look at the context here, dude.
Yeah, you also gotta know, like, when something trends on Twitter, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. It just means that people are talking about it. And I mean, I think, as you'll see with our Snyder Cut review, when you hear it, there are a lot more things to talk about there because there's just a lot more. Literally, there's just a lot more in there. It's 4 hours long. So, I mean, there is that, consideration to be taken. But yeah, this notion, because you are right, there have been some people out there with, some pretty sizable platforms on social media that are claiming anyway that it was a knockout victory just because it was trending. And yeah, I personally, I don't consider that to be a true metric of success. It is a metric of something. It says something about it that, it's being talked about, but it's not all that important in comparison to other things. As such, Disney Plus, I guess, and some people took this as, Disney had a press release the other day in regards to how Falcon and Winter Soldier did on the platform with its debut. And some people were questioning whether or not that had anything to do with the fact that Snyder was dominating the conversation. I mean, I don't know. That's just pure speculation. But Disney did reveal, they didn't reveal anything. They just said out of nowhere in a press release, without evidence, I might add, that Falcon and the Winter Soldier ranks as the most watched series premiere for the streaming service during its debut weekend. That's what they say, that apparently it edged out WandaVision, it edged out Mandalorian in terms of debut or weekend debuts that on Disney Plus shows. So that's what they say. Nielsen Streaming is not going to reveal any numbers on this week until 3 weeks later. That's just how they work. But what we do have at the moment, and I believe it was Variety or some of the actual trades that were running with these numbers, that they used from an analytics company called Samba TV. And what they found is Falcon and the Winter Soldier was streamed by a total of 1.7 US households compared to 1.8 million for the Snyder Cut. So these are the only kind of numbers we have. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I don't put a whole lot of stock into these because I don't know, like, okay, sure. Streaming is a new thing in the sense that a lot of the third-party analytics firms or a lot of the ratings people like Nielsen are still trying to figure out how they can even track that, how they can even track like what counts as a view is also put into question, because I think with this firm, as long as you're watching it for a total of 5 minutes, that counts as a view. And so whether or not you count that as a view, well, you see, this is where it gets a little tricky and where it's not so clear really about what this means. David, your reaction to these numbers and the big deal that Disney Plus made out of this?
Well, like the views, again, don't necessarily matter for me, especially for these two specific properties. It'd be just because, again, you got to look at the context. Some people, they really, really wanted to support Zack Snyder. Doesn't mean that they liked Snyder Cut far more than Winter Soldier or the Falcon and Winter Soldier. It's just that again, there's some heavy stuff happening within that movie that people want to show their support or just kind of curious as to what the whole thing is about. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just I just hate this whole debate of this, like, you know, clearly Snyder Cut's better or Disney Plus is going to the ground or something. I don't know. It's just a whole bunch of speculation that honestly that it doesn't really matter. And the fact that you said that Falcon and Winter Soldier was trending for a bit means that, like, you know, it still means that there's still some popularity to it. And because we're gonna have weekly episodes, the show's just gonna take over way after the Snyder Cut. So it doesn't necessarily matter.
I was kind of sidestepping that whole, quite frankly, as you were really framing it, insignificant, quote unquote, debate that DC fans or Marvel fans are happening, like which did better or the other. Like, that really isn't, I think, where I'm concerned about. Like, this isn't really, like, to me, who cares what did better? Like, who was watched by more? Just from, like, the standpoint of a fanboy, I'm talking about really what I'm most concerned with is how these two performed for their respective streaming services. And I mean, I don't have any idea what to really base this 1.8 million household number off of, like, because when I'm reading this and it says 1.7, so you're saying that 1.7 million viewers? Is that what you're trying to say? Because, you know, in regards to network television, that's not a very good number, so I don't know what it is how many real people watched it. Yeah, we need more information. We need other people like Nielsen to come in and, like, give us a better sense of how many people actually watch this. I think for me, what I'm most curious about these numbers is how many people actually tuned in. And overall, while some people are, like, consumed with this DC versus Marvel thing, what I'm most interested in is the real, I think, debate being had here is Disney Plus versus HBO Max. That's the far more important one, because from a we know from a subscriber standpoint which has more, but what I'm most interested to see is, was the Snyder Cut in and of itself a huge success for HBO Max, considering the fact that they poured $70 million into it just to finish that 4-hour movie. We'll be having that conversation on our other podcast when we discuss the movie in regards to Snyder Cut. But that's really, I think, what's most interesting about this. Also, in terms of, I mean, I guess Disney, some people were saying that Disney put out that Disney made the announcement that it was the biggest debut because it wasn't being talked about enough. I don't know. People speculate whatever they want to. Yeah, we won't know. I
mean, say whatever you want. The streaming service that's still putting out the best new content is Netflix. Yes. So, like, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah. Of course. All right. But I guess if we want to take these numbers at face value, they're good. They're good. I think that's what you were getting at, really, Jay. But it's like, okay, I guess people are trying to like form this narrative that Falcon and the Winter Soldier did badly. That's not really what happened.
You froze again.
Sorry, but I think what you were getting at there, David, was people that were trying to say that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier did bad, and that didn't really happen. Based on these numbers, or based on all indications, it seems like it was a success on some level. So, yeah, there is that.
And again, it's a weekly show. Then the numbers will probably get higher as the weeks go by. Right now, people are kind of like, saw one review. Someone said that they found the first episode boring. Some people found it to be fun. Some people found it to be just, and others are just kind of like, they're waiting for the whole thing, really.
Well, we have more, and these are from a worldwide standpoint. I believe I shared these numbers with you. 3 Marvel shows, as a matter of fact, were in this list that was sent out. So Disney Plus worldwide. So we're talking about outside the US. We're talking about what was the most streamed material on the Disney Plus service worldwide. And I mean, I guess this means it was a success. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was the number 1 most streamed show in the world on Disney Plus. So there is that. Mm-hmm. So there was a list of top 10 the most top 10 streamed shows on Disney Plus this past week. And 3 Marvel shows were on that. And curiously enough, it was the 3 shows that we've been talking about. So Falcon and the Winter Soldier was number 1. WandaVision, still getting those views, at number 2. And then curiously enough, the alleged not so popular Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Was at number 10. Wow. Not bad for a show that wasn't supposed to actually have been a success in the first place. Mm-hmm. That's curious. And then what's even hilarious is if you dig further into these numbers, like not just like worldwide, but like if you break down the categories from country to country, you actually see that the S.H.I.E.L.D., for example, is in the top 15. Top 15, not as in like top 15 TV shows being streamed, top 15 movies and TV shows being streamed when you put those two together. On Disney Plus trending in Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. That's curious to me. Top 15, you say? Wow, that I don't know, that sounds like a popular thing if it's being watched across, both movies and TV on Disney Plus. And conveniently, of course, the U.S. is not included. And I forgot for a second myself. Oh, well, that's right, because it's not on Disney Plus in the U.S. You have to watch it on Netflix if you want to see that show, which David and I both recommend you should watch. It's on Netflix. They've got 7 seasons. They're all waiting for you right now. Mm-hmm. So there is that. How about that, David? Does it surprise you in the least that this apparently disaster of a show has somehow found its way into the top 10 worldwide in TV shows and top 15 all around on Disney Plus?
No.
Curiously, of course, not a single headline was made about this. You think it would be big news that a show that has been trotted around as like a failure and not popular, making the top 15, making the top 10, you'd think that'd be a story. Not a single headline. This is just something that I found on Twitter, just scrolling through. And of course, I mean, I did check to see what the source was and verify that this did come from like, I think what's on Disney Plus. That's the official one. And they have these weekly charts as to like what's the most popular content on Disney Plus. And yes, I did backtrack to see that it wasn't just a fluke. S.H.I.E.L.D. consistently is in the top 15 every single week. So you don't hear that being mentioned all around. So there it is, guys. From defending one Marvel show to the other, this is something that was, I mean, I guess not too unexpected, David, because you and I think, made some of these predictions last week, if not the week before, when we were talking about WandaVision. And you knew it was going to happen, but here it is. I want to clarify who I'm about to mention. So this is a person who is a big deal on YouTube in this space. Her name is Grace Randolph. I bring her up not as me trying to legitimize her or whatever. I know people have issues with her. I bring her up because she says things sometimes that I feel are very indicative of a larger group of people who think this way. And I said this is exactly what was going to happen. And the knives are out for Jack Schaefer, the showrunner of WandaVision. And then this is what she said. And I believe I also shared these clips with you. So she criticized Jack Schaefer and Kevin Feige. So it wasn't just one or the other. But this is what she said. And go back at the last week's show and tell me this wasn't exactly what I thought was going to happen. So this is what she said. One of the head people on WandaVision admitted that she didn't read the comics. And that's why I think that show had a little bit of a problem. That was a big problem. It's one of the rare times that that's happened. And I don't know why Kevin Feige didn't come and correct that. didn't come and correct it better. In case it wasn't clear, she is criticizing Jack Schaefer, the showrunner of WandaVision, because she's not a comic book reader or a fan of comic books. And then further on top of that, she is criticizing Kevin Feige for putting in place, putting a person in power who is not a comic books reader. And then on top of that, she is also suggesting there that it was a big problem. What problem? David?
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it either. Again, like we said 2 weeks ago, I don't think you need to be a comic book reader to know how to write a story about a superhero. I mean, I don't know. And what was the rest of the quote? That's the only part that like really bothers me. It's just like, oh, she wasn't a comic book reader. She never written a comic book.
That's pretty much what the whole thing was saying. The whole thing was saying is she wasn't a comic book reader. Why was she hired? And she's basically saying that the fact that she wasn't a comic book reader, Jack Schaefer, is the reason why, according to her, the show suffered creatively and suffered with fans. I guess she was tying in the whole disappointment with fan theorization with legitimate quality criticisms of WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think we've said several times, that's kind of bullshit.
Yeah. And there is a difference in writing a comic book versus writing a show, kind of. I think I've heard like Stan Lee, he would just write the lines of the comic, but he'll just like, he'll write the lines and just give it to his artist, and they'll make whatever they can from it. They'll make the suspense, those like certain images that doesn't have dialogue, but like, again, it builds up to you the suspense, or just a bunch of action or something. So like, there is a difference between writing a comic book and writing a show, but it's still a story. And so again, you don't really need to be a comic book fan, or at least a fan of whatever superhero you're writing. And I'm pretty sure the writer of WandaVision did some research of her.
I mean, there was an interview I read myself where Jack Schaefer was saying, look, I was given some comic books to read. I read them. Didn't read all of them, but I read them. I took a look at them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do like no research whatsoever. But I mean, it's... I don't know what else to say that hasn't already been said that we've talked about, but it's like, you don't need to be a fan of comic books to know how to write a good story.
Yeah. And yeah, she read some comics, but she also like tried to be careful with how she treated this character in this universe. I think you've mentioned that in interviews she would talk a lot to Kevin Feige, being like, "Hey, is this okay to do with the character? Is this okay to do with her powers? Like, I mean, is this a cool way to show her powers or something like that?" So it's like she was being, I guess, respectful of the character and of the universe as much as she could, but still like tried to have fun with it.
I despise that talking point, and I felt that it needed to be addressed, because I can't help but think that there are people who think this way as well, and I think that's just crap. It has no bearing, really, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a larger criticism that Ms. Randolph also put out there in regards to the concept of these Disney Plus shows, these Marvel Disney Plus shows, and she basically called them a failure or irrelevant. And this is what she further said here. I mean, I basically just paraphrased what she said, but here's the actual quote. She criticized the lack of importance, quote unquote. That's what she said. She said, not having the stories connected means that none of them are must see. And that's really a problem. It's the same problem that Marvel is experiencing with making their Disney Plus shows not must-see. The bottom is falling out from under them already. First of all, to that last thing, what the fuck are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
WandaVision was like the biggest success. I mean, from different perspectives, and how Mandalorian was a success. And if you just look at the results back from Falcon, I don't know what she was saying when she was saying like that the bottom was falling out. Like that's something you reserve for when the disaster is occurring. And then she continues. She continues real quick. People want a story to be invested in, and when you have a bunch of one-offs, there's nothing to be invested in. If you can't get people to talk constantly about what's next, you're just not operating at peak performance.
So here's my thing. What do people mean? Like, how much connectivity, that's what I'm trying to say. How much connectivity do people want with these things? Because with WandaVision, the only thing is, they talk about the Infinity Stone. They talk about what is it, the Sorcerer Supreme and all that. Like, that's a bit of connectivity. I know it's very, very little, but it's just that the first thing that popped into my mind was Guardians of the Galaxy, and the only thing they mentioned was Infinity Stones. I was like, yeah, that's a connectivity, but then that's it. Like, there wasn't a big connection. And that's the thing. That was one of the things that people liked about Guardians of the Galaxy, is that it was disconnected from the cinematic universe. So I don't get what kind of connectivity you guys want from these things.
And if you want to just... No, finish your thought. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, Falcon and Winter Soldier had, like, the biggest connectivity to the universe, for sure. And some people are finding it boring. Some people are still not satisfied with it. I don't know. The fuck is your guys' problem?
It sounds like you're saying, I don't know what people want anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're so right, because that's, Guardians of the Galaxy is, for other reasons, of course, but I remember one of the big talking points, and Kyle always brings this up himself. It's like, well, it's so disconnected from everything else that, okay. And then I remember, and I've said this before, when S.H.I.E.L.D. was first airing its debut season back in 2013, one of the reasons for why it was so heavily criticized was because it was name dropping a bunch of Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
So what was bad is now good, or not. And let's see. Let me see if I can maybe work to answer your question. Fans on. Be quite honest with you, I'm not really sure what it is that I'm not 100% sure if all Marvel fans want something the way that I am sure most Star Wars fans exactly want something. Let me give you an example. When I think of Star Wars fans, I know exactly what they want, which is what they got with Mandalorian Season 2.
Mm-hmm.
They want a legacy Star Wars character to come in on a weekly Star Wars procedural show, and they do cool things, and they mention past shows or movies in which they were in, and they tease possible connections to what could happen or in the future or in the past, and that's all it is. And similarly, there is a subsection of Marvel fans that expected that with WandaVision, which is why they, theorized for weeks with characters that were never going to be a part of the show, like Mephisto and Doctor Strange and the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and Multiverse, and ultimately which none came to fruition, because why would it? So I think that's what most fans, or a large number of fans, that's really what they want out of these things. Now, with Randolph's perspective, since I did watch this clip, she was going at it from this very specific perspective. which is what Kevin Feige said a few weeks back at TCA, which was, you didn't have to watch the Disney Plus shows to watch the movies. Basically saying, if you missed out on watching those shows on Disney Plus, don't worry, you're not going to be lost in what happens in the movies. And what she basically took out of it was, well, then that means that the Disney Plus shows are not important. Nothing truly important can happen in the MCU on those Disney Plus shows, so why watch them? She's coming at it from the perspective of, if this is a universe that you want my investment in, then every piece of it has to be connected. Every piece of it has to be important. If it's not, then I'm not watching. Which is what she says, where people want a story to be invested in. And when you have a bunch of one-offs, there's nothing to be invested in. If you can't get people to talk constantly about what's next, you're just not operating at peak performance. Everything she is saying is every reason for why I was so pessimistic about these Marvel Disney Plus shows, because that's exactly what I expected out of them. But guess what happened? I was wrong in assuming those things, because so far, the opposite has in fact proven true. Whereas with these Disney Plus shows seem far more concerned with actually fleshing out characters instead of just acting as extensions of the movies. For example, the big thing with WandaVision is it was being teased to a lot of people that it was actually going to be the first act of the Doctor Strange sequel. Instead, it wasn't the first act of a movie, it was its own thing, as it should have been. And so the argument here from this person is, well, if these Disney Plus shows are not going to be basically the first act of a movie, well, they can't possibly be really important to the MCU. And I say to that, well, I don't care what it means for the larger point of the MCU. I just want a good story. I just want, to see these characters actually be given characters and to and be given time with them to actually get to know who they are. That's what I'm most concerned about. That's what I feel most people would be most concerned about. But yet we're stuck in this weird space where like people are just saying, look, a story and characters are nice and all, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for the cameos. We're here for the frosting. We want to know what's next, what you're doing next, what you're teasing next. We can't really be too invested in this if it's just going to be about character growth or development. Unless you're giving us truly worthwhile, like, cameos. This cameo hunger, like, is so weird now all of a sudden. But I think that's the perspectives that are out there. Did that make sense to you, David? And what do you think about all that?
No, I mean, that made complete sense. And I agree with you like 100%. I was the same way. Like, I was worried about these shows. I even said, like, I don't think it's a good idea to have these shows and like have them really connect with the movies. But like you said, the opposite thing happened. I'm glad that we're getting more character out of these characters, especially with Falcon and Winter Soldier. That first episode, like, amazing characterizations. And just again, like, I don't know what people want really. And
I also want to be extra clear here. Just because we constantly seem to frown on like quote unquote connections, that doesn't mean that David and I don't appreciate them when we see them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was nice. Look, there was a. First of all, they're very prevalent in these Disney Plus shows. In this first episode that we'll get into in a minute, there were a lot of like direct connections to the films, and even in something as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is it depends on your mileage, basically, whether you consider it canonical or not. But let's say they had a lot of like homages or nods to things that would happen in the films, or they would mirror certain things that would happen in the films, and they'd be like, oh, that's nice. Or they would feature some characters that were in the movies. Like, that's cool. We're fans, obviously. We like to see these things, but that's frosting. That's the stuff on top, but it ain't the heart. It ain't the thing that matters most in a story. Like, for example, which I just mentioned with Shield, David and I, we don't really. The reason we watched the show wasn't for the connection to the films. God, no. It was because we loved the characters. We loved the dynamic, and we wanted to see what that ultimately would bring.
Yeah. No, and then the connections things, like, I love those the most, too. Like, with Shield, minor spoilers, but when you see the quantum realm, when they bring that up, I freaked out. Like, you can even tell my sister this. Like, she saw it, and I was just like, that's the quantum realm. This is how they're gonna do this and that. Like, I was freaking out, and I even freaked out in the Luke Skywalker scene in Mandalorian. I didn't like the like the thing behind it, like like what it does to the show. In the
moment, though, it's cool.
It's awesome. Like, I love it and everything. And then right now, I'm watching another show, Superman and Lois. And that one, it's in the CW. It's supposed to connect with the other CW shows, Supergirl, Flash, and everything. But they haven't done anything to confirm that. That like, oh, yeah, my cousin, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's nothing of that in that show.
Right.
But honestly, this is like my favorite show right now going on. It's on its 5th episode, and it's fucking amazing. But I don't need those connections on any network or any show. What's the word I'm thinking of? I can't remember. But
you don't need any of those connections to make you love or appreciate something, really. They're nice, and you can appreciate those moments, but ultimately, unlike other people, that's not what makes or breaks a viewing experience for you.
And the thing, though, with Superman and Lois and WandaVision, both those shows are one of my favorites right now, and it's all because of character. Not because of story, connectivity, or anything. Like, honestly, I'm going to bring that show up, Superman Lois. I'm going to bring that up a lot when we review Snyder Cut. So, like, you'll understand why I love it.
It's a good tease. And again, I don't know, Ms. Randolph, what she follows. She's been suggesting that no one's talking about Superman and Lois. I've heard a lot of people talking about Superman and Lois. It's a new show on CW. And it, like voices that I trust have been saying, now this is the Superman I've been waiting years to see.
For sure. Oh, God.
So, I don't know. Yeah, it kind of throws the other people's points of view out the window there. But yeah, interesting takes, and I have some takes at the back end that I think are far more jaw dropping. But just wanted to put it out there. Yeah. I agree, David. You're right. Let's get into this review here. So our initial impressions of the episode 1 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I believe it's called the New World Order, I want to say. New World Order, I think it's called. Since Peter has been the one that has been adamant about this, I did time exactly how long the episode was, because of course we do have that discrepancy. When you look at Disney Plus, it says 50 minutes. It ain't 50 minutes. Because you have 10 almost minutes of credits. So what I did was I timed it after the opening Marvel fanfare. I'm not including that. By the way, I know I'm going off a little bit of a tangent here. Let me just say, we talked about in the first review of WandaVision if that was going to get grading. I'm at the point now where I'm kind of muting it because it's just a bit too much. I actually would think, or actually would have preferred, if they had just did a shortened variation of it for the TV shows. Because I can get the fanfare for a movie, but when you're seeing a show, especially week to week, and if it's in front of every episode, it's do I really need to hear and see this in the front of every episode? You can give me shortened versions of this, and it would be, I don't know, you could have made a separate intro for the TV division.
Yeah,
do that.
And especially because I think you can't skip the intro, I think, but it doesn't do it automatically for you. Especially at one point, if you're gonna binge watch this, maybe some people are. If you can't skip it, it's gonna get annoying.
Yeah, and I feel like it already has, since I've been watching it so many weeks in a row. When you factor in WandaVision, so there is that. But back to the overall issue, with how long the episode was, 42 minutes. Which, if you remember the rules of broadcast TV, for an hour show, like S.H.I.E.L.D., for example, or Superman and Lois, I imagine that's an hour show, right? Superman and Lois, yeah. That's the standard runtime for a drama series, an hour-long drama series on network television, 42 minutes, because then you have 18 minutes of commercials.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, again, as I mentioned in previous weeks, I don't really care. Ultimately, like that's not, I don't look at a number, like how long something is, and like automatically feel like, okay, it's on the shorter end of things for TV episodes in particular. I don't look at that and like, oh my God, I only have like this many minutes of this. I don't. The only times, if this is one of these cases where I start something on my TV and it shows the runtime, and if it's on the longer end of things, and even then I don't really care, but it does make me, it makes me ask questions in my head. So I remember on Christmas Day, I was putting on Wonder Woman 1984 on HBO Max, and I saw the runtime and it was like 2.5 hours, and I'm like, the sweet spot for movies like Wonder Woman 84 would be 210, 215, 220. When you're pushing 230, like I want people to understand and appreciate when a film of that genre has kind of earned the right to push 230. So films off the top of my head that I love dearly, and I think most people would consider to be great films. Well, the Star Wars fans, I'm not so sure. But Last Jedi and Infinity War are both literally 2 hours and 30 minutes long. But those films, I think, at that point, when you watch the movie, they earn that runtime. When you watch Wonder Woman 84, it abused that runtime. Very much so. I didn't hate the film like most people did. But part of the reason for why it wasn't great was because it went on forever, a lot longer than it should have, and it kind of went nowhere. And that may also be a conversation we're going to bring back up when we talk about Snyder Cut, which is 4 fucking hours.
And here's the thing though, like runtimes, like they don't really matter. Just like make it as long as you need it to be. And with Snyder Cut,
as long as it doesn't feel long,
yeah, and
that's the trick.
Yeah, and for me, Snyder Cut didn't feel long. For sure, you could have cut it down immensely, for sure, but it didn't feel long. And so I think that's why I'm okay with the 4-hour runtime with that. It kind of needed it for this story, for these characters, especially because they're introducing new ones. And recently, I saw a show on HBO Max called Infinity Train. That one, 3 seasons, 10 episodes, each episode 10 minutes long.
Huh.
And it didn't feel 10 minutes long every episode. It felt long, but not in a boring way, but just in like I'm taking in every single detail of it, and it just feels so long. And so again, just guys, run times, they don't matter. And mind you, Infinity Train kind of ended in a cliffhanger, so it's not like, oh my gosh, I want more, and not in the like, how dare you end this so soon. It's just, oh god, I can't wait. I hope there's a next season. Oh god, it's a big cliffhanger.
Oh boy, yeah, that's the nasty side of TV, where you're left in the balance of a show that you're so invested in, and you don't know whether or not it's gonna come back. And as you know, David, I know what that feels like. I experienced that for 7 years. So yeah, both of us experienced it for 7 years. It ain't pretty. I'm telling you, there was some dark nights when it looked like it was going in a bad direction. But yeah. All right. Now to my initial impressions of this episode.
Right.
I know we're still. It's a lot of side tangents. We are?
Yes.
Oh boy. Okay. My initial impressions of episode 1 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier are very good. Very, very good. In fact, I think it was a pretty much perfect first installment, if there ever was one, especially for this of a 6-episode series. It started off in exactly the way that I thought it was going to start off with, which this was a big action sequence and everything. But then it took a breath, and then it went to places that I didn't even consider was a possibility because of how low my expectations were. Honestly. But man, I actually, in retrospect and having seen it twice, I'm very thankful that this exists, because, there are so many side characters in the Marvel films, and you never ever have enough time to really get to know most of them. And so, like with WandaVision, and in this case here, you're given the space to really kind of see Bucky and Sam sit with their thoughts. And I thought it was very, it starts off with a bang, but then it gets very insular. It gets kind of retrospective, where these characters kind of are, and it kind of takes a similar theme from the Winter Soldier film, and the arc that Steve has in that film is kind of this search for an identity. Like, he used to be something, and now he doesn't know who he is. And in this case, with Bucky and with Sam, they're kind of in a similar space now too, in where they're kind of an in-between phase. And trying to move on to what's next, but they're not so sure what's next or what they should be next. And so, from that standpoint alone, I think you used the word amazing. I used the word excellent. It was just honestly great all around. And there may not be much to say in terms of speculation, in terms of what's next. Okay. I know people have been talking about that, like that may be like a negative to this show, and that's unfortunate if some people are going to be unfairly comparing this to WandaVision, because clearly from this first episode, they're two very different shows. They're in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they're two very different shows. And it's what I was also kind of surprised with was not just how serious it took our two characters and the issues that they have, but it also, especially with Sam, tied it in directly with some social commentary it may be saying with Sam's identity as, a black man in America, and then also what it's saying about America, and some of the things that it does here. So I was very impressed, and I think it was an excellent first installment. David?
I 100% agree. No, yeah, like I've said many times, like what I want these shows is like get an idea of who these characters are, and we definitely got an idea of who they are in that moment in the first episode. And you mentioned that, both Sam and Bucky, they're trying to find like who they are, who kind of heroes they want to be, I guess, or something like that. And that's actually really going to be with all of the characters in this phase.
Sure.
Wanda,
yeah.
She didn't know who she was without Vision, without anyone. Again, she lost Cap, Black Widow, Vision. So like, who is she? And we got that in the end. And then with this one, now we're getting Bucky and Sam. I'm very, very interested with Bucky's character, like how he's going to deal with it, everything. And I think we're going to get that with Hawkeye. The big thing in him in the movies is that he wants to retire and, you know, be with his family. And so I feel like there's gonna be we're finally going to see like the struggle with him of like letting go of superheroing and be a full-time dad, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my guess. That's my theory. I don't know. But yeah, again, with the show, I love where they put these characters at, and kind of, I'm kind of looking forward to what's going to happen next. Again, I really have no theories as to what's going to happen next. So who knows?
Yeah. I guess I'll more than happily exchange a complete lack of theories for some reassurance that what we're watching is actually going to have some depth to it, and it's going to, you know, have a full, complete story. And as I wrote down here in my notes, it kind of defied my worst fears, like in every step of the way. That isn't to say, of course, that as we go down the road, Marvel won't do some of the things that they are accused of doing quite often. But at the very least, as long as it fulfills what they are telling us are going to be these really important journeys for Bucky and with Sam, as they did with Wanda and Vision in WandaVision, I think it'll all be well worth it. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of at the point where, like, you know what? It feels good to watch something and maybe not be too worried about how it'll turn out. That isn't a guarantee, of course, that it'll be like great every single week. Probably won't be, but it's a promising start, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, I wonder if this has crossed your mind. Do you think perhaps the reason why this hasn't garnered as much online conversation as, let's say, in comparison to WandaVision or in comparison to the Snyder Cut, is because this is very straightforward in the sense that what we're seeing is, and also it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a downer because someone described it that way in a negative context, and I don't think it that way at all, but it is introspective. It's the kind of stuff that actually makes you think. We have some scenes where people are talking and talking about themselves. We have that big action sequence, obviously, which we'll get to. But for the most part, it's conversations being had. Mm-hmm. And in most situations, pretty interesting conversations.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you said that this episode, it's very straightforward. It's just basically telling us where these characters are at, where the story's going to go and everything. WandaVision, like, it just had a giant mystery by the end of its first episode. And you got to look at the context of what it's based off. House of M, that one, you know, it's just a crazy story with a lot of mystery put into it. And that's exactly what you're getting with that show. This one, Falcon and Winter Soldier, I feel like you're kind of going to know what the plot is once it finally kicks in, you know, just stopping the bad guy, probably figuring out the source of the superpowered people, like how they became superpowered. But it's just, I think the meat of it is just going to be this back and forth between Bucky and Sam trying to get along, trying to stop the bad guys, and again, figure out who they are, what their role is going to be in this world.
Well, first we got to figure out who the bad guys are. And from this episode, we know some bad guys. Mm-hmm. Some other bad guys may not be as obvious as others. So let's go ahead and start breaking this down. We start off real quick with Sam, you know, ironing his clothes. He has the shield next to him, and we hear a little bit of dialogue from Avengers Endgame, where Cap basically handed down the baton, or the mantle of Captain America, as they say, to Sam. And then we cut to the opening action sequence. And there's a lot to say about this, but in short, as far as action sequences are concerned, this may be far and away the most impressive I've seen on television.
Oh, for sure. I mean, kind of like I said with WandaVision, I wish it was a bit more fun, and this one was definitely fun.
Oh yeah.
Like it's just really cool, the concept of Falcon just having literal wings flying around, and I love the way whenever he'll bring out Red Wing, he'll actually like talk to it, like if it's an actual pet or something.
Right.
But then also it's just this kind of like almost back and forth with him and the villains, like where he's flying, then he's in a fist fight and all that, and then it goes where you just didn't think of with the bad guys putting on wingsuits and flying away from him of all people. And apparently, I didn't know this, but what they wanted to do with Falcon is they kind of wanted to show his flight differently from Iron Man's. Like his is more smooth flying and all that, and a lot more tricks to it. Like I remember the one thing that always stands out to me is in Civil War, where he retracts his wings, does like a little flip and kicks a helicopter. Mm-hmm. Like that's the thing that like I think Iron Man would have just straight up tackled it or something.
Right.
So it's just they're really having fun with Falcon's action scenes.
Yeah, I mean they finally gave him a memorable action sequence too. Like I mean he has a whole set piece to himself. And look, it was unbelievably impressive. Mm-hmm. I mean, just from a budget standpoint, holy crap, that thing looked like that was movie quality just about. Mm-hmm. Maybe there was some minor wear and tear here on some of the close-ups on his face, where it was like, well, I guess that looks a little bit like he was, from a green screen. But even then, it looks beautiful, even if it was that. I mean, if it was, it wasn't bad. It was great, green screen, if that's the case. But you're so right when you also point out, as far as this is so much better choreographed from an action standpoint than WandaVision was. Like, I mean, I guess there were budgetary restraints, but that kind of really amounted to like magical people like shooting lasers back and forth at each other. That basically much of what it was. Mm-hmm. Whereas here, it just felt so much more. And I don't know if this may be a pun, aerodynamic. I mean, it was, from. Falcon breaking into the what was it, the helicopter, and then it was just the way it was staged, right? It went from a helicopter fight to like basically in the like a battle in the middle of the air, and then other helicopters join in. You have these parachutes, and we go into one helicopter and went out the other, and a bunch of explosions and like. It's great.
Yeah, and I love the suspense of it, where it's a race to a finish line basically, and you have to stop them before. I think, and I love and that was really cool, the back and forth between him and the other soldier on the ground. Where
right. Like Torres, I believe his name was
Torres. Okay, yeah,
but I believe it was, yeah.
But I just kind of like that back and forth again, because there's just like, hey, you gotta hurry up, dude. It's like, forget about it, blah blah blah. I don't know. It's just, it was really fun, and it was a quick establishment of like their, I guess, companionship, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Could be friends.
They've clearly been working in the 6 months since Sam came back into existence.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Which that in and of itself is also news, that Sam went back into active service with the military. Which also makes you wonder, wow, the Avengers are not really a thing, are they? Especially since what happens at the end, like the Avengers don't seem to be a thing anymore.
I don't think so, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, the Avengers, they'll
come back. They'll come back, I think, in the universe. But for right now, they don't seem to be. There don't seem to be any active members.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no team basically of Avengers where there was before. So.
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm guessing, but before there was like. They had the base of operations. They would go to their own missions. You know,
Right.
they're like they'll hear rumblings of something, and then one of them will go investigate or something. But I think with this one, like, yeah, I think they basically show that straight up he's just working with the military and not really connected, I guess, to the Avengers. I don't think anyone is.
But I wanted to, comment quickly on what you said. You're so right. The suspense was built up since it was a race to the finish line. And I mean, just the acrobatics are just so beautiful. You have here, his name is Batroc the Leaper. He is making a return from the Winter Soldier film. He was the one that went hand to hand, or had hand to hand combat with Steve in the amazing opening action sequence of Winter Soldier on the Lumerian Star. One of the best in the MCU, as far as I'm like. I still think the best action the MCU has ever seen is Winter Soldier. I mean, hand to hand, like combat is there. And look, the Russos aren't directing this, but great job following up that action. I mean, it was honestly pretty great, and it was just fun, man. It was just fun to watch something like that. And I was also kind of impressed with how long it was too. It wasn't just like it lasted like I don't know how long it lasted, but it like I feel like it, like, since we're watching a TV show, obviously the budget's one thing that would never exist in a TV show, but like I don't think because of the budget it wouldn't be anywhere half as long as it actually was. Like it felt very much like the opening set piece of a movie.
No, I mean, some people were comparing this scene to the beginning of Winter Soldier, so
right.
That's exactly it. One thing I liked that didn't happen in this scene was when he was facing off that one big guy. I thought he was gonna say some line of like, "Oh, you're not Cap," or like Cap was a better fighter or something like that. I thought they were gonna bring him up and like that's just gonna be like the little seeds planting in of.
They didn't really talk much. It was
yeah, they didn't talk much at all. But like I thought that was gonna happen. Is like, oh, he's facing one guy who went hand to hand with Cap, and I thought he was gonna like kind of kick his ass a bit or something. But no, I mean, and that's the cool thing about Falcon is that he didn't go about it hand to hand like Cap did or anything like that. Like, no, he used his own way.
Yeah,
very different, which kind of goes into like the next scene, and I really like what he says in that speech of his. I think it's the next scene.
Right when we get to that.
That's
not the next one, but it's in the same beginning spot. We'll get to that scene in a bit.
Yeah, my bad.
One final thing on Batroc. He seems to be someone that doesn't seem to die.
I don't mind that, actually. I love recurring villains on like shows.
So do I. But it's kind of hilarious how much he survived. Like, did you see how many people died during that?
that's actually what was funny. My sister and I kept looking at each other like, dang, he's really killing them all, huh? Like, and we were complaining about the DCEU and all that.
Well, I'm glad you pointed, because there's a difference though. Like, slight distinction.
Yeah, it's very
slight distinction. I guess to me, like, the key difference is Sam wasn't taking any joy in killing these people. Like, there wasn't like a smile. Whereas something that we'll be discussing in a very upcoming podcast that we've already mentioned several times, a common criticism of like one of those characters in particular, one of those superheroes, while he's basically beating down a bad guy, he seems to be, he has a smile on his face, like he's enjoying like tearing this person bit to bit, and then decapitating them. There is, I think, a little bit of a distinction there where like it seems as if in one example, the hero in question is taking joy in basically murdering, whereas in another instance, he's just doing the job because there really wasn't an option to keep this person alive.
No, I mean, I know there's a difference between the characters. I just find it funny that like he's straight up murdering these dudes, and like not one person's kind of like, that seems kind of off. And I mean, he's a soldier too. I mean,
right.
I'm sure he's used to it.
But that's always been that, I think, even though it's not like, I guess, thought about as often, if you go back and look at the Marvel films, then you're not really shown those bits. But like, no, the Avengers do kill people.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really, and that was never a thing in the comics, from what I understand. Not that I read them, but from what I'm told, that was never really a hang-up for them, save for Spider-Man. Spider-Man is the sole exception for that one. Whereas the DC characters, the DC Comics characters, some of those characters do have a certain code, like Batman, as our Peter Martinez screamed at us in one legendary rant from years and years ago on BVS, that review we had. A literal 30-minute rant. He was like, Batman doesn't kill. That's literally his character. Oh boy, I guess we're going to have to relive that. Yeah, like, but that's been a thing in the MCU, you know, like they don't really get hung up. Like I know Iron Man straight up killed some scientists in Age of Ultron, I think, in the beginning of there. It was like just blasted them to bits. I guess it just depends on who you are, but like, I mean, if you're somebody who is watching this and has like a, let's say, a treasured like connection to the comics, this wouldn't even be an issue with you with Falcon. It may be with the DC characters, but no, you're right. It was like, you do take note of how many people died in that opening sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into, this is a small conversation that Sam is having with Torres. Torres kind of gets into some exposition here to introduce, I guess, a reoccurring adversary that we'll be seeing here on the show, which are called the Flag Smashers. Interesting name. And that's, you know, something that they're going to be investigating. And then it gets into a really a fun bit here where, you know, some people come by and they thank Sam for, you know, saving the world and bringing back half the universe. Like, he was basically saying that, you know, you brought my wife back to me. And yeah, this is like, I think 6 months after the blip, as they call it, which was when the people who vanished came back. And that was a really like sweet thing to see. Like, we don't actually, when you think about the Avengers films or most of the Marvel movies, you don't really see a lot of that. You don't see people, like ordinary people, much really. You don't see ordinary people just coming up to an Avenger and thanking them for something they did.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think in later films, well, what happened would be the opposite, where people would just come up to them and say, fuck you, you did this or that. I remember. It was, yeah, so it was interesting to see that up close and personal. And then Sam and Torres have a hilarious back and forth where Torres is seemingly a Cap fan at heart, and he's like, so, come on, you gonna tell me where he is? Is he true that he's on the moon and everything? And then Sam's like, he gives him this look like, no. No.
Oh yeah, that was really funny, especially the way he ended it. It was just like, yeah, I got some moon stuff to work on. It's just like, no, I mean, again, like it's a good introduction with that character. I like their back and forth and their companionship, but also it was. I also just liked the interesting way of like revealing our villains, or like one of our villains. What is it, the Flag Smashers and all that, and kind of it's the first bit that we get of how this world is working now, and how it was in the 5 years and how it is now. And I like that concept of like people kind of going, it was better when half the people were gone. It's just like, what the fuck? How? Like, it's a messed up view of it, and it's.
Are they the Flag Smashers, or are they like Thanos loyalists?
That is honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if like they went to that concept too, of like kind of people worshiping him as a god.
Well, here's a theory. Here's a theory that will not happen, but since we're doing it. So we know that Helmut Zemo from Captain America Civil War is basically going to be one of the main villains in this series. And we see that he has his, what they call comics accurate mask on, in the trailers anyway, from what we've seen. And it's purple. Could it be purple for Thanos loyalists? I know it's bullshit, but like it's hilarious if it would be, you know?
That's actually a really good theory though. And it's got the lines, vertical lines to like represent.
It looks like Thanos' face.
It's his nut. If you look at it, chin, like that's definitely
it. Yes.
Oh man, that's actually really cool. Damn. But yeah,
it's not gonna happen. But I mean, it's just fun to think about. I mean, it's somewhat plausible.
It's somewhat plausible, but again, theories. They're just supposed to be fun. Don't take them seriously, people.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, again, just a good introduction for that character.
Yeah. And then, as you say about he has some moon business to attend to, then we transition to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., and I believe it is meant to be the exact same, although this is an area that we hadn't seen before, but this is supposed to be the exact same exhibit that Cap himself visited in The Winter Soldier. It doesn't look too much like the same exhibit, or maybe it could be an expansion of it, or it got its own, I think, building maybe, because it did seem to be like they're reopening it. It could have been a recent like renovation or expansion, and Sam delivers the shield for their collection, so that was my impression of it. But if you notice, and if it hasn't been mentioned already, how much this feels like, Winter Soldier, the composer for Winter Soldier and Civil War, Henry Jackman, is doing the music for Falcon and Winter Soldier, if it wasn't obvious enough. Because if you notice, there are actually several musical themes from Winter Soldier that are actually carried in here. So, for instance, where Sam is kind of hitting the crescendo of his speech, and he's kind of looking at the shield as he's about to give it to the United States government for the collection, or so he thought. There's this wonderful shot of him looking at the shield, and then the image of Steve behind him, and you actually do get to hear the motif that played when Steve was going to the exhibit himself in Winter Soldier. That exact same motif was brought back here. So I love that. See, that to me is the connective tissue that I really do love here. Especially musical motifs, especially with Winter Soldier, which I do think is a great score, although it's not one that's talked about all that often. It's not an orchestral fanfare kind of thing like Williams or Silvestri. It's kind of like I don't want to say it's a techno, although there are techno, I think, influences in the Henry Jackman Winter Soldier score, but I know when I heard the Russo's commentary that it was very much supposed to be an action movie score, and you hear that especially with one of the best themes, the Winter Soldier theme, which you do hear played in this episode when we get to Winter Soldier in a bit. But let's get to this sequence that we're seeing here, where Sam is basically this is a speech that is supposed to mark the, I guess, opening of this exhibit, but it very much felt like a tribute, almost like a eulogy of some sort, although it wasn't all that sad. And in attendance, you see a familiar face, and I was actually quite happy to see him. So happy that I actually thought to myself, why isn't he going to be a reoccurring player in this series? Because I actually like Don Cheadle. I don't know, but just seeing his face, it's like a calming presence of some sort. But like to see him in attendance, his roadie, right? Lieutenant Rhodes?
I don't know his whole name, but it's just
Rhodey, as we mainly know him. Yeah, it was so cool to see him here, and it makes all the sense in the world that he would be here. So that was nice. But the speech in and of itself, that was really interesting. And you kind of get at the crux of where Sam is right now, because he very clearly is not comfortable with the idea that he himself is anywhere near worthy to step in for Steve Rogers. Clearly, that couldn't be further from the truth in Steve's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Steve is the one, he literally had a lifetime to think about who should be the one to carry the mantle. And he gave it to Sam at the end of Endgame. And Sam is just, he seems at the moment to have just made peace with the idea that, I'm sorry, Cap, but I'm not your guy. It can't be me. I can't possibly live up to it. I'm not the right person for it. And I think there are some lines in his speech where he says, I believe, it's time for new heroes.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't include him. And I'm wondering, like, what's his mindset there? Is he just at the point where he's like ready to like step aside from this whole, even from his gig in the military? Like, is he just done with this, you know?
I didn't really see it that way. I more so.
Let me be clear. I'm not saying that's where I think it's going. I'm saying, where did that come from? Like, where is he at right now? And that could be a possibility. I don't think that's what it is. But you were saying?
Well, it's just in my mind, it was more so two things. It's one, yeah, he doesn't feel worthy of taking out the mantle of Captain America. But the other thing is that I think he wants to be his own hero, you know, have people see him as the Falcon, not the new Captain America. Or like how Spider-Man, you know, are you going to be the new Iron Man? And he kind of freaks out about it. And, you know, his lesson in it is that you're not Iron Man. You're never going to be Iron Man. Just he chose you because you're you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if that's going to be the same with Falcon. I feel like in a big way in the end, he does symbolize Captain America.
Right.
But like you said, he'll fit with the times, I guess. Because that was the big thing in Avengers, is that, you know, they give him the costume and everything, and he's just like, costume? It's like, isn't that a bit old fashioned? And he's just like, I mean, sometimes we need an old fashioned sometimes to get through stuff. And that's kind of what Cap was throughout the movies, basically. It's just all this constant old fashioned view of him.
Mm-hmm. And since you mentioned it himself, Coulson, I think I believe, said at some point, you know, symbols matter, institutions matter. And in this case, Steve very much seemed to believe that someone should carry the symbol. And even Sam here, he says, I don't know if there's ever been a greater symbol than the shield and what it means. And so, and in fact, it's even used in a very different effect by the government at the end of the episode, which we'll get to. So you can tell the significance behind that. You know, the power that it carries.
So, and also Rhodey coming out of it, that was a big surprise for me.
I didn't think we were going to see him.
Yeah, same. Like, I really just did not think at all. But then, like, when you see him there, you're kind of like, oh, of course he will be there. Like, I mean, not just because, like, he's in the army, but, like, you know there's going to be some commonality between them. And, like,
yeah,
it's a bit of a big... I mean, it wasn't big to me, at least in this episode, but, like, maybe down the line he'll come back and they'll have a big conversation about it. But yeah, and I'm just like thinking, okay, this is probably going to be the only big character coming out in this show. People, calm down. Okay,
there's your Luke Skywalker cameo. Your Luke Skywalker. Shut up.
Yeah, so shut up now. But yeah, no, and then It's just kind of like the conversation, especially just because it started off normally. It's like, hey, how's this family? How's this family? And I like that bit of joke of like, oh, bring your nephew by on DC. I'll show him how to fly the real way,
the right way,
the right way.
Yeah, that's what he said.
It was cool. It was cool.
Yeah, like you see, you're given a glimpse of a friendship and an association between two characters that unfortunately we just never got the chance to see on the screen because of how much else was happening there. And that's why, ultimately I'm so thankful. I can't believe I'm saying that now that these Disney Plus shows actually exist, because we're actually getting to see something like this. And when you talked about the commonality that those two characters have, well, let's keep things real. They basically were the de facto black sidekick to the main character in their movies. So when you have Iron Man, you have War Machine, Rhodey, and then when you have Captain America, you have the Falcon, Sam, and yeah, I mean, I assume, and of course the fact that they're both, black man in America, that's an identity that is one of shared experience. As a collective, that community in itself can definitely bond over things that they themselves would only be exposed to, and how this country treats them. And so, yeah, and they're also of the military. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of things that they have in common. I guess the only differences that we've seen between them is, they took different sides when it came to the Sokovia Accords, which, slight tangent. Are those Sokovia Accords still a thing?
I don't know. I mean, hopefully, they did bring it up a bit here with Bucky and all that, and I'm guessing it's the same with Sam, of like the deal Bucky got. I'm sure it's the same with Sam and all that. But as to like whether or not they're still ineffective, like they're still gonna be heroes per se, if they're working with the government, I don't know.
It just seems like I am struggling to find the rationale for why that would still exist when they've been proven so disastrously wrong. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think an argument can be made. If the Sokovia Accords didn't exist, Thanos wouldn't have succeeded in wiping out half of existence in the universe.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I hate that scene in Infinity War where they're talking to General, I don't know, what's his name? Ross, yeah. And it's like his hologram form. He sees Cap, and like his decision to, when he sees him, is arrest him. It's like, bro, the whole world is in danger here. You want to arrest, like, one of your biggest heroes,
your only defenders left, and you want to put them in jail.
I don't get it. And some people did argue that the Sokovia Accords should still be in effect because of what happened with Wanda and WandaVision. Very understandable, I get it. But if you saw that scene in Infinity War, and if you saw Civil War, and if you don't hate those scenes with General Ross, I gotta disagree with you right there. They're the most annoying things about those movies.
Yeah, and I have a feeling if there's still a thing, they're going to find their way back in conversation in this show. And so I just what's annoying to me, it's the rationale doesn't exist anymore in my eyes. How many times do they have to be proven incorrect? How many times? Especially since you also have other people who violate the Sokovia Accords that are evidently in positions of power. So yeah. But then we get back with Rhodey and with Sam here. They take a walk through the exhibit. They're catching up, as you say, and then They stumble on a large viewing room, filled with Captain America memorabilia. And Rhodey is basically kind of operating as a conduit for the audience here, in a sense that, he goes up and like, are you really going to make me ask? All right. Why aren't you doing this, Sam? He wanted you. Why do you think you're not good enough? And I think a lot of us are asking that same question too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have spent time with Sam. When that moment happened in Avengers Endgame, sure, some of us may have been like, well, shouldn't maybe Bucky would have been in consideration for that?
I heard that argument, and people are...
Let me be clear. Before you go off on that, some people may have been thinking that I was just like, sure for a second, but then when you thought about it for more than a couple of seconds, like, no, he was the right choice.
Yeah.
Sam was the right choice to do that.
For some people, the reason why it should be Bucky is because he has the robotic arm, he has the super soldier serum, like, he has the strength, basically, to, like, hold up the mantle of Captain America. And with that, I'm just kind of like, cool, you're literally thinking of what that one character in the first Captain America was thinking. It's like he's choosing brawn over heart, like, there's a reason why he was wrong. There's a reason why it was Cap from the beginning. And it was...
Were people really thinking that?
Yeah, I heard one.
Really? People were thinking because he had a fucking metal arm? Are you serious?
It's just like it gave him a boost of strength and all that. So I think Bucky has the super soldier serum in him. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Oh, okay, for sure.
A variation of it, I think.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's just people are choosing that he should be it because of the brawn, but not the heart. And if you really think about it, Bucky's not the right choice. Like, I get he's trying to make amends for what he did, but like, it's that left him scarred. Just now, he's just healed from like brainwashing. But as you see in this episode, he still has a lot to go through to make amends for himself.
Yeah. I agree with what you said, but it also just blew my mind. Okay, just imagine that being your first thought. Like, Bucky should get the shield because he has a metal arm. Okay. And more to the point, to this conversation they're having. I'm not sure Sam says anything new here that we weren't already suspecting, and he basically reiterates, like, look, I just don't think I can be the guy. It can't be me. And interesting use of imagery. If you notice when they're in that large room with the Cap memorabilia, if you look at off to the side, there is one of the famous posters that Cap, I think we've seen it from the first Avenger, is that when he's doing a pose with his hand out and pointing to somebody, and the poster says, "I want you." That was, I think, used for wartime propaganda in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the imagery in the scene, when you see that poster off to the side, Cap saying, "I want you," like, he's pointing directly at Sam, where Sam is positioned in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a reminder that Steve wanted you.
Yeah.
He picked you for a reason. So I thought that was nice that we saw there. And I have to say, I knew the ending was going to happen. It still caught me by surprise when it happened. And we'll get there when we get there. All right, to the ending of that. So let's move on to what we see next, and that is what I guess you don't really know it's a flashback until you realize it's a flashback, because it is basically Bucky as the Winter Soldier from years and years ago. and because he's murdering people out of nowhere. Then he says Hail Hydra. So yeah, I didn't expect to see that. And it just appeared out of nowhere.
Actually, for a second, I thought this was like a different Winter Soldier.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I thought. And I was kind of like, oh my gosh, are they gonna like put the blame on him again? He's killing people.
You know what? I think I did think that for a second too, and I'm glad that didn't happen.
Same.
Because it was like we did that already. It was called Civil War, and that it was annoying enough then. We don't have to go through it again now. Like, can we not do that? So, no. What this actually was works even better, because this is basically a nightmare that Bucky is experiencing of somebody who he did kill, and it kind of harkens back to that scene from. Well, that scene was like basically the end of Civil War, right? Where Tony kind of has Bucky in a headlock. This is after he found out that he had killed his parents. And then Tony asked him, "Do you even remember her?" And then he responds with, "I remember all of them." So this is basically a little bit of a payoff for that. And what this sequence actually, this flashback sequence actually is Bucky remembering killing an innocent bystander, which was actually kind of scary watching that happen. Like, it's one thing to see the Winter Soldier like mercilessly murder like bad people. But somebody who was just basically at the wrong place at the wrong time, that was just sad. And then, of course, he wakes up and yeah, he wakes up and then we find him in therapy, which is interesting. I'm not sure if we've seen any superhero in therapy yet.
Wanda needed it
in the Marvel,
but
yeah, well, not just yeah. Well, she really did. I guess you could argue Agatha was the therapist in some fucked up way. Other Avengers, I'm sure, would need some of it as well here. But with Bucky, I think it makes the most sense because he is a character who has, he's kind of a tragic person in the sense that his mind has been so endlessly fucked with. It's been so endlessly fucked with to the point where he can't remember which version of himself he is at some points. And all it was, the point of it was for him to be a vehicle to kill and kill and kill. And it's just so horrendously damaged him. And, the films just, it was something that I feel was implied there, but it never really touched into this because I'm not sure there was much real estate to really go into this. But with this, in that sequence that he has, that back and forth with his therapist, that was the most I feel we've gotten into kind of, going through his mind and where he's at right now. And he's very isolated, in fact. It just seems like he's probably even worse off here than he was in the time of the films. Granted, of course, we didn't really get much time to see the aftermath of it. I think he says in this back and forth at once that, I got a little bit of calm, peace, a little bit of it in Wakanda, where I think it was there where they kind of helped bring his mind back, and also, where he was a little bit rehabilitated, physically anyway. But then, he disappeared for 5 years, he came back, and now there's this, and yeah, as his therapist says, like, you've been pardoned, you're free. These are good things. And he's like, well, free to do what? What am I supposed to do? And then, of course, there come, in this exchange, the revelations that he has been formulating a list of people, crossing them out one by one, but not in the way that Winter Soldier would, but in the way that he's been instructed to do so, by not hurting anybody, not killing anyone, not doing anything illegal, And then having to say this hilarious, like, this kind of AA speech at the end, like when he basically traps this Hydra senator. And he does this thing where it's like, I used to be the Winter Soldier, but I'm trying to be better now. And he smiles, and he just gives this really creepy smile and then just walks away, which I thought was just great comedy. What are your thoughts on this whole sequence, David?
Oh, I love that whole scene. I mean, it's sad in a way, but I like that we kind of got into his mind again. Like, this is what I want. Like, I want to know, like, what, like, how are they in this situation? And so now we got really, really deep with his character. And, you know, it is sad that he was just like, yeah, I went to war, I died, was brought back, I just kept killing people, was forced to kill people. And then that moment where he just gets peace in Wakanda, he goes back into battle again, and then he disappears. So it's like him and Sam and like Wanda, they never got a break. They never stopped. And I mean, it's not like, you know, the rest of the other team, the ones who didn't get snapped away, like they had it easy or something like that. No, it's just that, you know, for them, it just kind of instantly changes the whole world. But this, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just very abrupt for them, this whole thing.
Yeah. And you know, part of me wonders, if these Disney Plus shows didn't exist, would we even be seeing any more of these characters?
I don't think so. And the thing that would have bothered me is that in Infinity War, it almost seemed as if Bucky was just better now. Like he just...
Yeah.
Like he... Well, like you said, like he was a bit of at peace over there. And that's kind of how I saw it. And so...
Right.
Again, that's why I'm glad we got these shows. It's like, now there's way more to it. I mean, I don't know if maybe the movies would have brought it up or something, but
not really though. I mean, maybe in mentioning, but like no. So yeah, this is a great scene. I guess the only bit of nitpick that I would say in the sequence where they're talking back and forth, and tell me if this made you wonder something as well. There was a really weird angle, like a really super close up of like of Bucky's face and the therapist's face, and it kept like switching back and forth for like a really long time. Mm-hmm. And tell me that didn't feel a little weird to you.
Yeah, I get what they were trying to go for. I think they were like trying to like get closer and closer to kind of make him feel constricted of the therapy and like what he has to reveal.
Yeah.
But it went on for a bit too long, you know?
Yeah, it kind of lost its effect, and and the more it went on, the more noticeable it was, and the more you asked yourself, why is this still here?
Yeah. I mean, again, I got what they were saying, what they were doing with it. Just, I don't know, maybe cut to something else afterwards, because I liked it in the end, when she asked him, like, it's like, you're free to do anything. And he's like, to do what? You know, it's just like the way he said it. And again, it's like, it's a close-up shot. It's confined. And there's she said, the therapist says he has a lot of things to do, but for him, very little. Just not much at all.
Remind me, what happens exactly next? Do we cut back to Sam here, or do we go with Bucky in Brooklyn?
Bucky in Brooklyn. Okay,
great. So hey, he's living at home, basically. You know, born and raised, alone, obviously. And another reminder that this is a very old person. He's 106 years old. His family's gone. So, but you see that he's hanging out with this older gentleman, and he goes to this bar. They're having lunch and everything. So it's good that he's made some friends. Oh, one bit of detail that we kind of went over in the interview, not the interview, but the therapist sequence was the fact that the therapist had gone through Bucky's phone, and then she had mentioned that he had been ignoring Sam's texts. So it's a reminder that Sam has been attempting to stay in touch with Bucky, and Bucky has not necessarily been reciprocating that. And then one other bit of information that I thought was fun, and I guess that's to Bucky's age here. He's using a flip phone. If you notice that.
Yeah.
So, which, I mean, I'm no judge. I mean, my first cell phone was a flip phone. So.
I didn't have, I mean, yeah, I had a flip phone at first, but for like the longest time, I had the sliding ones. You know, the ones that you turn to the side, right, and you had like a keyboard. I had that for like the longest time. It was until like high school that I finally got a smartphone. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think me too.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I got a smartphone until I was in high school. Until I was in high school, yeah.
I think I might have been like a sophomore, I think, or a junior. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were the first ones. Well, not the first ones. We were among the first, like where the smartphones were becoming to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the first cell phones were cell phones, like flip phones or slide phones, you know, like those, before the smartphones came in. So, you know, just a little detail that I like to show his age there.
Yeah, that's cool.
But let's see here. He's basically, I'm not sure if talked into is the right way of saying it, but he's basically kind of thrown into a date that Yuri had basically asked a girl that worked at the bar out for him. So there's that. I don't remember. Was there a scene where he is on a dating app? Bucky.
Not before, but he mentions it on the date that he tried using a dating app, and he was just kind of like, so weird. He doesn't understand it.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure about that. Yeah, so the date goes fine, but he very clearly is keeping a lot of personal details close to his vest. I mean, the fact that he has a metal arm, is covered up by his glove. But it goes about what you would think it would go. Like he's just a man who's broken, and he's just not comfortable with that at the moment. And he clearly has something else on his mind. And then comes, I think, the revelation that Yuri's son is died years ago under mysterious circumstances. There was actually a scene where I think the man has a little bit of an emotional breakdown when he sees a piece of food that his son liked. Kind of a really well done but sad emotional sequence. And he basically says, Bucky, like, look, I mean, I know he's gone, but something about it just didn't feel right in my heart about how it all happened. And I think it was, I don't know if it was clear in that instance, but it kind of becomes clear even more so when Bucky goes to his apartment and then he sees the photo of the son. And then it was like, oh, fuck. Holy shit. So the person that the Winter Soldier killed earlier in the episode as a flashback was the son. Yeah, that's some heavy stuff there.
Yeah, no, for sure. It is fucking tragic. Just all the things that he kind of has to go through to forgive himself, kind of go past this whole Winter Soldier thing. And my whole thing is he going to tell that guy about his son? And if so, for me, should he? That's just a big thing for me. This is why I'm so interested about his character. throughout this series. Like, what the heck is he gonna go through? Like, is he gonna like kind of lose his anger in certain fight scenes because of who he was, or I don't know. And I find it kind of funny that his only friend is an old man. It reminds me of that scene in Age of Ultron where they're having the party and you see a bunch of World War II veterans in the party, and that's the only people Cap hangs out with.
That's right. I forgot that. Well, Cap is a World War II vet.
Yeah.
Only he doesn't look it. And neither does Bucky. Yeah, I wonder about that myself. I have to imagine he is going to tell him. But man, that might break a couple of people if that were known. Yeah, like that isn't going to be a pleasant thing to see.
Mm-hmm. I mean, are we even going to see it? I can see them like at the end of the show. Yeah, like you see the old man again. He opens the door. It's Bucky, and like he says, and like without, or at least like you see them talking, but you don't hear what they're saying. He goes in the room. It's like, you know what's gonna happen. It's just kind of like, should we see that? I don't know. It's just. I'm really excited for his character arc here, man. Oh god, yeah. It's tragic. I get it, but if they do it right, you know, it could be really cool.
Powerful stuff too, you know,
for sure.
Like, no, this is great stuff. I love it. And then we get a little bit of stuff with Sam. Now he's going back home to Louisiana. And he see his sister, which we didn't know even existed up until this moment. Mm-hmm. His sister and his nephews that have grown up in the 5 years since, in his absence. Since his absence and then eventual return, you know, after the blip and everything. And this is also a little bit different than what we're usually, I think, accustomed to seeing with Marvel. Because the problems that Sam has seemingly walked into are very much unlike the problems that we see, you know, in superhero films. These are the kind of problems that normal, everyday people, normal, everyday Americans face all the time. Sam's sister is holding on to a business that was handed down to her by her parents, and she's barely keeping her head above water. She's seemingly, at the time that we meet her, come to the conclusion that she's no longer willing to put up with something that's not really all that worth it in her eyes. And then Sam comes, and he's just immediately offended that she would even try and sell away the fishing boat, the shrimping boat, to sell away what's left of their parents' legacy. And it immediately brings this Marvel Disney Plus show to kind of a down-to-earth, maybe one of the most down-to-earth levels that I think we've seen Marvel do. Mm-hmm. You know, and it also calls into question a lot of different things, like, oh, so the sibling of a former Avenger is having financial trouble? That's interesting. I think the banker brings it up later in the episode where he asks, didn't Stark, I don't know, give you a paycheck or something? And then Sam's like, well, it didn't work that way. Huh. It's interesting. It's very interesting. Also, it's America. You have a superhero celebrity. You'd think you'd be able to find a way to fund or get the funds somehow. But clearly Uncle Sam, in this case being America, wasn't all in favor of doing so. That sequence there comes where they both visit the bank, And things start off a little okay. You know, the banker is reading the papers, but he keeps looking at Sam because he feels like he's seen that face somewhere. And then Sam is clearly enjoying the attention here and playing along with, I don't know, have you? And he does like a little bird pose or something, and then that's supposed to mean the Falcon or something.
That was so funny. Like, of course he would try to use his celebrity status to try to get some money and everything. But yeah, no, that was an interesting. I really liked the conversation between he and his sister. You know, for him, this is still recent, but for her, like, this is probably a decision she was making 5 years ago or something.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was an interesting conversation, and you understand both sides completely. You know, Sam feels like this again. Everything in his life is just so abrupt. This decision is one of them, and so I kind of like how she finally let's take a chance, get a loan, I guess. And in the scene with the bank, it's also and also a really interesting conversation. I like that they were like, "Oh, but you haven't." Well, what did the banker say? It's like, you haven't like worked in 5 years or something, or you haven't really got any records in the past 5 years. And she's just like, the sister is just like, just because he was gone for 5 years, like, I don't know what the fuck you expect here, but. But
can you believe that fucking shit? Like, I mean, because that made me question too. It's like when he was saying you have no reported income for the last 5 years. He was saying that in the most normal sounding way possible, and then the sister was like immediately, "Bitch, he's been dead for 5 years. How the fuck are you supposed to make?" I mean, she didn't say that, but like, seriously, how the fuck are you supposed to make income if you don't exist?
Yeah, that was actually something I didn't bring it up, but I remember in Far From Home. You know, they were doing like this little charity thing in the beginning of like people who've lost their homes in the past because of the blip and all that. So it's like at the kind of like that little bit of information, but it's just this one even expanded even more. Just like everyone's really having trouble like integrating, I guess, back into the world. And so, yeah.
I mean, look, I think this is that's actually true. Like, let's say if the blip happened in our universe, and let's say like my whole family blipped out of existence, or snapped out of existence. What happens to this house?
Mm-hmm.
And then we come back 5 years later, and some other people are living in it. Well, what happens then? And in this case, it was a couple of different, things that was going on in this sequence. Of course, the banks would be able to find a loophole in denying help to people who were literally snapped out of existence and brought back through no fault of their own. Of course, they would find a way to screw people over, because ultimately that's the business that they're in. And then twofold, it just seemed, I felt it was rather laid on thick here, especially when his sister says, "It's funny how things always tighten around for us," in which I think she was referring to people who are in the black community. It just seems so inconspicuous here. Like this is the family, this is the direct family of an Avenger, and you can't give him a loan, a bank loan. And then there was another thing I wanted to point out here. Found this tweet that I think spoke to this particular scene, David, and it's hilarious to me because, as usual, I think it involved some some people not clearly seeing what was being telegraphed in that sequence. And this comes from Alicia Grasso. She's from Screen Rant, and then this is what she said in response to this sequence. A lot of people leapfrogging right over the not too subtle point that Sam couldn't get a bank loan because of implicit institutional racism and discrimination to instead blame, checks notes, Tony Stark, who is, double checks notes, dead. Too many people. What she was basically getting at here is some people she was seeing on her timeline were basically blaming Tony Stark for Sam not being able to get a loan from the bank, instead of, as Alicia says, implicit institutional racism and discrimination, which was very clear here.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I do get that, like, it is a big question to ask is, did Tony Stark not pay them? Like, did he not kind of create some sort of fund of, like, if anything happened to them, will their families get compensation or something? I don't know. And I mean, my only defense really for Tony is that he was literally funding everything. Like, he made Sam's wings
he
better.
gave them free housing.
Yeah, so like there is some good things and all that.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, I don't know. I feel like there should have been a bit more on his side. But actually, I didn't even know that people were kind of like going straight for Tony and blaming him for his financial troubles. But no, this is literally because he was gone, and for some reason he can't get help, especially as an Avenger.
Yeah. And then it was like it was just really pathetic. The guy was literally, as he was delivering this really horrible news, he was like, "Can I get another selfie?"
He's just like, "Are you serious right now?
Are you serious?" Yeah, if I were Sam, I would, like, if that didn't work, the next thing I would try is basically go on Twitter and blast the bank and, you know, put them on blast, and then get my social media following to, like, send them hate and then publicly pressure them to actually give the loan. And if all else fails, I'm sure Pepper can give you a loan.
Yeah, I mean, though, I feel like he's
I know. That's not who Sam is.
Yeah.
He's not the kind of guy that would go for handouts or go for loans. Like, go and ask his friends for money, basically,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's somebody who wants to be a self-made person and wants to, you know, make sure that this business is sound, not just for his benefit, for his sisters, but for, I think, their children when they're gone. So, yeah, I mean, I understand it. I'm not saying that these are issues that I have with the show. I'm saying, like, if I were in that position, this is how I would go about doing it. Of course, I say that with not realistically criticizing or judging the quality of Sam's character, because Sam is not me and I am not Sam,
Mm-hmm.
for very different reasons. So, but yeah, that was a pretty, that was bad for them. Then we see here a first glimpse of the Flag Smashers. So Torres is in some European place, I'm not sure where, but he basically goes to this meetup of the Flag Smashers. They put on masks. I believe they're purple with red. And then they rob, I think, a bank, and Torres gets to one of them close in action, and then I believe the implication is the leader, at least, had super soldier-esque abilities where he was basically punching people across the street, the same way with Torres. Then Torres calls Sam, you know, to brief him on what went down, and there seemed to be a moment where, you know, Torres. Well, no, the camera was sitting on Sam's face, and he was thinking. Then Torres looks at Sam, and he kind of asks, "Well, you don't think it could be?" And then Sam's like, "No. But just keep this between you and me." And I wondered what that was about. And then I saw some chatter on Twitter, and I think the implication is some people were saying that perhaps they thought that maybe it could be Bucky relapsing into the Winter Soldier. That's what Torres or Sam may be thinking. And, well, Sam hasn't really heard at all from Bucky, so it's not outside completely the realm of possibility. So there was an interesting moment there.
I like that bit of introduction with the flag smashers and all that. It was pretty cool. They really show their strength and all that. It's just, I guess, curious as to what the heck their plan is. I don't know what the heck they're gonna do. But yeah, that final scene. I mean, we all saw it coming. I saw those set photos from I don't know how long ago of the new Captain America, and I've heard that, like what the story could have been, or what might be, is that the government doesn't want. I heard that the government doesn't want Sam at all to be the new Captain America. They might be a bit different. I mean, from what we see in this scene, it seems like they don't want him to. But I'm curious what their reasoning is as to, like, why not give it to him in the first place if Cap chose him.
So this is what happens. So his sister tells him there's a press conference happening. They turn on the TV, and then they realize that the government is going to announce a new Captain America. The press conference is led by the exact same guy that we saw earlier at the presentation at the Smithsonian exhibit for Captain America. And then there was a sequence where he had thanked Sam for doing what he were, quote unquote, doing the right thing and giving the shield to them, which, you know, I think implies that the government had been putting pressure on Sam for a while now to hand the shield over. And it seems very duplicitous, as, you know, Americans are, and the American government is, because it seems what happened is they lied to Sam Wilson. They said that they were, you know, they wanted it for the exhibit, and that's by the ending of this episode becomes complete horse shit. Whereas they wanted a new Captain America. They just didn't want you, Sam. They just didn't want you. Oh, and the new guy that they got also just, you know, out of coincidence, happens to be white. Let me tell you something, David. That ending got me so angry. So, I think the best word to describe that ending is absolute disgust. Just absolute disgust. I mean, it's not even about, you know, seeing some random guy in a Captain America suit. Okay, whatever, but it's not really that. It's the fact that this just feels like a fuck you to so many, like, to this whole episode maybe kind of felt like a fuck you to Sam in so many ways. Like, so the American government already fucked Sam on one level with denying him the loan earlier on. And now they fucked him over again in a completely different way. Mm-hmm. And that is, and it felt very much like, and I'm sorry if maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it felt very much like the government was saying, I'm sorry, but we're just not ready for a black Captain America yet.
Yeah, basically. I'm actually curious what's gonna happen in the next episode, how the world is going to react. Because I just saw it, right? I'm like, I have the episode like right here, and when the new one comes out, the crowd that's there, they're all cheering and clapping.
Yeah.
And it's known that Sam was supposed to take up the mantle.
It is known?
Yeah, I mean he's making that speech.
That's right. That's right.
He's like, hey,
okay.
I can't. Yeah. This can't be me. This thing has got to stay with you. Blah blah blah. And I mean, if people know the battle in Endgame, I'm sure they'll know that Sam is supposed to be the next Captain America.
Yeah. By the way, how do they know the intricacies of that battle? Did somebody like videotape the whole thing? Like, what's going on? I didn't see any cameras.
I'm pretty sure they all gave a detailed description of what happened.
Well, Sam, if you want to make money, just publish a tell-all book of all the details that happen. I mean, there are ways to do it. Like, again, if I were Sam, I would be literally going on social media and then shaming them for literally, I would, do the thing that always happens. Just like say, well, these people literally just, they didn't tell me they were going to have a new Captain America. And isn't it just so coincidental that it ended up being a white guy instead of a black guy?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, man. That was just, that made me so fucking angry. I was pissed at the ending of that episode.
I mean, I saw it coming. I mean, I don't like it either, but like I saw it coming, so I was just like, "Oh God, they're doing this. This is happening in this episode," and just his reaction to the whole thing. Oh my God! And what I like though, when you see the new Captain America, everyone had the same reaction of like, "Who the fuck is this bitch right here?" Just apparently there's like people making memes like all about it. There's one of like, how dare you stand where he stood, or it was great. But
now this is Wyatt Russell, who is playing this character, the son of Kurt Russell.
mm-hmm.
So there's that. No, the memes were hilarious. There was this one that made me laugh where it had a side-by-side of Steve and then Wyatt Russell, this new Cap. And above, one, like the one with Steve said Coke and the one with Wyatt Russell said Pepsi. I was laughing so hard.
That's funny. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know Kyle wouldn't appreciate that. I was gonna say that. I thought it was hilarious.
No, but yeah, I'm curious what's gonna happen next episode with that. Like, are they gonna show people not liking that? Is Bucky gonna not like that? Like, how is he gonna react to the whole thing? I mean, I know he's gonna be on Sam's side because if you remember in Endgame, when like Steve gives him the shield, he like Sam looks at Bucky and he just gives him a little nod, like, "Yeah, take it." So I'm sure he'll be on the side, but
he's like, I'm sorry, I want to go back. Like Sam, in that moment, Bucky was like, "Yeah, I don't want that shit. It's all you."
But yeah, I'm curious though. Like Bucky is old fashioned. So, like, is that gonna bring about a little debate between the two of them or something?
Well, we still have to see how they even get together in the first place. This episode, they were completely separate apart. So, like, I think what's really interesting to see is where this goes, right? Like, how do we get the two coming together in the first place?
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, that is curious. But, yeah, that ending. Fuck them.
No, fuck them. Honestly, that was awful. But it is a hell of a cliffhanger. And I really am curious to see how things go because, like, it really calls into question, like, all right, so this is, and you see just the look of regret on his face, when like, damn, fuck everything. Like I really made the wrong fucking choice. And then on top of that, like in one episode, he gives up the mantle of Captain America. He doesn't get the loan, and then they get a new Captain America without even telling him. Like, how fucking like awful would you feel? So I don't know what's happening next week. I mean, all I know is there'll be an episode. We'll watch it and we'll come back and we'll talk about it. Mm-hmm. But as far as speculation is concerned, I'm going to assume we're going to see them come together, Bucky and Sam. And I think at some point we are supposed to see Sharon Carter and then Zemo and then other players, perhaps.
Oh, maybe that's how they come together.
Sharon?
No, Bucky and Sam. Maybe Bucky sees that Zemo is back and he's gonna want revenge on him for what he did to him in Civil War.
Did you see the list?
What list?
So there was a list that Bucky had on him of names. And one of the names that he crossed out was that senator that he got arrested or had, in that sequence. At the top of the list was the last name of his friend of whose son he killed. So basically trying to make amends. That's his list of amends or people he needs to get out. Mm-hmm. On that list was Zemo. Mm. So there is that.
Mm. Oh, wow. Wonder. Well, I mean, this whole thing is that no one gets hurt. So is he going to just confront him and be like, hey, I'm no longer a Winter Soldier or something? But why would...
Maybe.
I don't know. I get why he would want revenge on Zemo, but at the same time, though, I don't understand how.
I'm not so sure if this is a list of revenge. I think this is a list of loose ends.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying though. It's like, how is he a loose end though? Like, for one thing, he's supposed to be in jail. I'm sure they'll explain as to how
he's not in jail anymore.
Why he's not in jail. And it's just kind of like, it doesn't, Zemo...
Maybe that's why? Maybe he feels like, I don't know.
Well, it's just, I mean, again, it's a weird thing, because it makes sense for, that senator person and then the old man, that was because of him being the Winter Soldier. He didn't really do anything to Zemo as the Winter Soldier. That was all the Avengers and their...
Well, no, he did nothing to Zemo, but I think maybe Zemo kind of did something to Bucky. He basically almost got him killed. He, with the revelation, the tape and everything, that he had killed Tony's parents. Like, basically Zemo was the reason the Avengers broke up. Bucky kind of was in the crossfire of all that, which then led to Infinity War and Thanos and everything. So
yeah, but then that's my thing though, is that why is he on the list of making amends if he's not really a product of... Zemo's not really a product of the Winter Soldier. Again, I understand, having him in his mind.
I don't know.
It's just that's the confusing thing about
clue.
it.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out, right?
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out. I mean, that's a good question you have. I guess we'll find out. Mm-hmm. Any lingering thoughts for this episode?
No, not really. I'm excited for them to get together, and there's got to be a lot of back and forth between them.
That should be fun, yeah. Well, let's get into some feedback for episode 1. I shared this with Peter, and he couldn't believe the things that he was reading, and I, this is the part where we talk about takes of the week, and some people had some strong feelings about this episode that I honestly couldn't. This is my bias here a little bit, but because I don't agree with a lot of these takes, but I was like, what are you saying? Really harsh stuff. So here, from the AV Club, they say that the first episode is stuck in the past. They call the first episode a redux of Winter Soldier without Captain America. And they say that the episode was bogged down by exposition and setup for a throwaway plot.
I mean, I can understand the like copy of Winter Soldier, because again, it starts off with him doing his own mission, being badass, and then he goes to a museum later on, and then I don't know, Bucky talks to an old person, like how Cap
Sure.
talked to Sharon and all that. Like, I understand that part and everything. It's just, what was the second part of what was that?
That it was too much exposition, too much setup for a plot that seems throwaway.
Yeah, that's every first episode of a show, really. It's just exposition, you know? You gotta know where these characters are at the moment, and you kind of have to, like, plant little seeds of what the fuck is the plot.
I know. This one's a bit of a doozy. This is NBC, their opinion piece. And they say that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier wants to ignore America's real legacy. This is an interesting piece here. God. Based on the first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Marvel's approach looks likely to be less serious and less thoughtful than its predecessors.
Again.
I'm gonna stop right. Wait. He's saying it's less serious and less thoughtful? Did we watch the same episode?
Yeah. I mean, I don't.
This is weird here.
I don't understand how that's less thoughtful than the show that started off with a comedy. I mean,
instead, it seems to want to be an action-adventure buddy show featuring quips and high-spirited stunts. That was the first, maybe, opening sequence. As always, there's nothing inherently wrong with a light-hearted show about superheroes punching each other. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier does itself no favors, though, by pretending it has something to say about America. I feel like it does have something to say. Thought we just talked about that. I don't know what he saw, honestly.
Yeah, same. And I disagree that it's pretending to say something about America. I think they'll dive into it. And I've heard, don't quote me on this, but I've heard like in episode 3, same thing as with Wanda. Like in episode 3, things are going to kick off real quick. And I don't know what. It could be the plot. It could be the whole America's legacy thing. I don't know. But these first few episodes are you're just going to have to wait to see what the full picture is.
Yeah. This is from RogerEbert.com. Falcon and the Winter Soldier struggles to get off the ground. There isn't a whole lot of new story to chew on, but the action, which I bet will define this series overall, leaves one hoping the show's later episodes are treated with more imagination and ambition. I'm just at a loss to what they're describing here. Like like they're basically saying that the first episode was like so bankrupt of anything creative or imaginatory or new, or like, and I was like, I don't know.
The whole thing was new. The whole thing is
Chicago.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, David. Go ahead.
The whole thing is something that we're probably never going to get in the movie, so it's very imaginative.
Literally. The Chicago Tribune, this is what they say. Did I like it? It's okay. If you like being pelted by narrative Easter eggs for 45 minutes.
What no, I mean, yeah, Easter eggs as in like Captain America and all that, but like those were important to the plot. You can't really have Sam and not talk about Cap in this episode. So I don't know what the problem is on that.
I'm not so sure either. Wired.com. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is all wrong for TV. Feels like a bloated blockbuster masquerading as a television show. If Falcon and the Winter Soldier is just a slow-moving version of a traditional superhero movie, it's hard to see what the point of it is. It's hard to see what the point of it is. I don't really know what this is even trying to say.
Yeah.
It's a movie that's masquerading as a show, but we wouldn't really get this in a movie, so... Weird takes this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really can't. USA Today, Falcon and the Winter Soldier is no Captain America, but it's trying to be. It says that we lack a true understanding of Bucky and Sam, and he calls the episode superficial and surface level.
Again, it's the first episode. I mean, like, I know people will probably point out, like, oh, Breaking Bad had the best pilot episode. I like the Walking Dead pilot. It's great and all. But, you know, the first episode, you can't really bank on a show on its first episode. Some shows have horrible first episodes, but it's a great, amazing series. Some others have an awesome pilot episode, but kind of gets...
It ends horribly.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
Vanity Fair. They call the show... They say that the show is, quote, unquote, shaping up to be a downer. They say, for someone who isn't especially moved by the MCU, a mumblecore Marvel where superheroes mostly spend their time struggling through difficult conversations as they reckon with their legacy feels kind of great. I'm worried, though, that it won't last past my idea of what the series could be. Marvel is so committed to pleasing the masses that it can rarely move beyond exactly what it is. Children's fables and big, sprawling technicolor. Yeah. I guess this person was saying is, it's all right, but I don't know if this is actually going to commit to what it's going for, at least from the first episode.
Again, wait and see, really.
Who knows?
And then the whole, it's, what is it? The episode seems like it's going to lead into a downer. I wouldn't say downer, but there's definitely going to be some emotional moments and emotional conversations throughout this show. Hopefully, we don't know. But I'm not going to see it as a downer. I think by the end of it, we're going to be very hopeful, and those conversations are going to be needed.
Right. No, you're so right. SF Gate says that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is just as intimate as WandaVision, but lacks a clear hook. Whether or not you enjoy Falcon and the Winter Soldier hinges largely on whether you like thinking about superheroes as much as you like watching them.
Honestly, if we want to compare the two shows, like the first episodes in terms of entertainment, I feel like they were about the same for me. You know, like I like the comedy in WandaVision. I really like that action scene in Falcon. But I kind of like for WandaVision again the comedy, but also just the performances was the thing that was super fun with with Falcon. It's just the characterizations that really sold it for me.
I don't like the implication that what this says here. It's like, whether or not you'll like this is like if you like to think about superheroes as much as you like watching them. But this is just so weird because isn't one of the main school of thoughts out there by, higher end critic circles that the problem with superhero films is that there's not much depth to them? Isn't that the thing we keep hearing?
Mm-hmm.
And so when it's trying to have some kind of depth, and then this person says, well, if you like to think about them instead of just watching them beat the crap out of each other, I don't know. This is just real mixed messaging here from my perspective.
I think they're trying to it's almost like they're trying to sound like the mass audience. You know what I mean? Instead of actually critiquing the show and what it's trying to do. This
one came from Game Rant, which had a line here that kind of made my jaw drop. Says that, Falcon and the Winter Soldier can avoid a major WandaVision problem. With the focus on action and a more straightforward plot structure, this show might be able to avoid fan theories overshadowing the story. As if the implication in this sentence was that the theorization was a flaw of WandaVision?
No, it's that's the fans' fault.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought too. But you see this narrative taking hold, and I'm like, what the fuck, people? We just discussed this last week, and then, of course, the final one that I have here, and then we'll bring it to a close. And this is interesting, because, you and I said last week, I bet you we're going to see some headlines. First, which this could still happen, but we haven't seen it yet. The one that we predicted was, Falcon and the Winter Soldier is everything Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't. That's one of the ones that we thought we would see. One of the other headlines we thought we would see was Falcon and the Winter Soldier is already better than WandaVision. That's something I think we were expecting to somewhat see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you were kind of wrong, because the opposite, I think, proved true. This is a hilarious, mean-spirited headline. The Daily Beast wrote this. I'm not going to read the actual article. It's just the headline, because it kind of says it all. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is no WandaVision.
I mean, it really isn't. It literally isn't, though. So I don't know.
It really isn't. But what it's trying to say here is the what's implied in this headline is it's not as good as WandaVision. Which, how's that for irony? We thought what the headlines were going to say is that Falcon and Winter Soldier is so much better than WandaVision because of how straightforward it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Sure, yeah. It's yeah. These were really mind-boggling takes. And a lot we can't really comment on until we've seen much more of the series. So, there was a little taste for you guys to see how the show is being discussed and how it's being received, and hopefully we have a better idea of how it's doing the following week, when the episode should be the only thing most people are talking about. But we'll see how that thing goes. But thank you all for listening, David. I don't think you have any last thoughts here. Overall, no, Keith, we're good. Mm-hmm. You can catch me and David in our next episode when we discuss Zack Snyder's Justice League and Raya and the Last Dragon. We can't wait for that. And of course, next week when we come back and review the second episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And if you're so inclined, of course, we have recap episodes of WandaVision if you want to go back and relive it with our recaps, as well as the 7th and final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We have all those as well. You can catch our podcasts every single Sunday, sometimes on Thursdays, anywhere you listen to podcasts, whether it be on Apple, Spotify, Castbox, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts. Stay under the spotlight, and we'll see you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.